You might call it your spiritual path. You might call it an awakening. You might call it your self actualization. You might call it the dark night. You might call it getting closer to God. Whatever you call this path that you're on, it can be at times very lonely or alone. Maybe not lonely, but feeling alone. And here's why: you're on a path towards something that no one else is. You're on a path towards getting closer to you, to who you are, to the deepest, truest part of you and your soul, whatever you believe to be the core aspect of your human being. And that's a lonely journey because if you're on the path to that, everyone else might be on the path to their soul, their self actualization, their higher spiritual self. But you're the only one on the path to your higher spiritual self, your self actualization. And so it's like you're going through the jungle, got a machete in your hand, and you are whacking away, making a path for yourself where no one else has gone before. That's what it was like when I went through mine. I mean, it's a never ending process. I'm still going through it, but that's what it feels like. And with that comes a lot of other emotions like uncertainty is a big one I experienced. You don't always know if what you're doing is the right thing. You don't always know if the direction you're going is the right direction. But hopefully you have something, and I want to speak to this later in a moment. Hopefully you have something calling you, pulling you forward as your guiding light, as your North Star, as something that's like, this is the direction I'm going. And there's a lot of pain and a lot of discomfort and confusion along the way and sadness. And so that comes from this lonely journey. This lonely journey, a big part of it is we have to learn, and this took me a long time. We have to learn how to let go of things that were not ours to hold on to in the first place. And so let me explain what I mean to you by that. When you're trying to become your true self, closer to your authentic version of you, the reason why a lot of us start this spiritual journey is because we've deviated from that. And we deviated from that somewhere, somehow, some way in the past. And because we've deviated from that in the past, we want to come back to it. And we want to turn this around and get back in line with who we are. And there's a lot of journey and challenges and discomfort along the way. And so let's dive into a little bit of what's going on here and why, and some of the tools that we can learn along the way to make this easier on ourselves, less confusing, more so we can understand what's coming and see what's going on. So as we get conditioned in society and told who to be and make decisions that we have to because of money, like I have to do this career for money, or I have to take that job for money, or whatever, we start to separate. And that's just one example, right? For me, I chose a career that I knew I didn't want from the moment I chose it, but that's what I ended up with. So that was younger me, right? How are we supposed to know when we're 18, in high school, trying to figure out what we're going to do for the rest of our lives? It's we don't know ourselves enough. Well, it depends, I would say, on the family you were raised in. The family I was raised in, there was chaos, there was dysfunction, right? It wasn't pure and clean and hey, let's help you become the very best version you can be. There was just a lot going on. So you deviate from your authentic and true self. And so this gap is the pain. This gap is the discomfort. This gap is feeling lost in life. This gap is, I feel like I'm doing everything right, but I'm not happy. I feel like I'm doing what I am supposed to and was told I was supposed to do, but I don't feel joy and fulfillment like I would if I was on this path. And so a lot of people they get a lot of success, but then they try to come back here. And so this is what happens. You have to learn, this is what I had to learn how to do. You have to learn how to let go of the things that are not you, the things that are not authentic to you, the things that are not what you would have chosen, and learn how to let go of these things so that we can turn this like cruise liner, this oil tanker around, because there's a lot of momentum going in this direction. We want to turn that oil tanker around, that boat around, to come back and come closer. And to do that, there's a lot of change. I'm in Florida right now and it's like 50 degrees outside. That's why I'm wearing this pea coat. But there's a lot of change that needs to happen. You have to learn to let go of the things that are not serving you and that are not helping you get in the direction that you want to go, which is towards you. And we have all these attachments to things, to people, to family, to friends, to our careers, our work, whatever. And we're holding on to them so tight. And so, one of the ways to learn how to let go is to learn how to grieve something that you had for so long, for decades, that is no longer serving you. For example, maybe you didn't have the family you thought you had. In my case, I thought I would have more understanding and support from my immediate family members as I brought up what I was noticing within the family and in my own situation and, looking for like a conversation to be had. And that didn't happen. And so I realized a few years ago, I don't have the family that I thought I had. I don't have that support. I don't have that heart within the family that's really helping me evolve and become who I want to be. And so that was a grieving process that I had to learn to let go of that idea that I thought I had something and I don't. I still communicate with my family. They're just not who I thought they were for me. For me, right? That's the main thing. It's not for um it's just it's my own experience, right? I'm not blaming, I'm not saying anyone's wrong. It's just for me, it's not supportive in the way that I need to become that guy, the true authentic me. So you learn to let go of things like that. And it's sad, is what it is. You learn to let go of the things that you thought you needed along the way that you've held on to for so long. And that separation, that is where there's a lot of confusion and a lot of mixed emotions, a lot of sadness. And you learn along the way to just not drop those things, but to shed aspects of you that are holding you back in some ways. So that's one of the things that as you start to separate and you start to feel the pain of not being authentic to you, family is one of those things that really does condition you when you're young. And so there's so much of the momentum in this direction comes from our family environment and our family conditioning. So that's one of the things. And so you start to learn like, okay, I want to get back closer to who I am and start discovering that. And it's like, where do I start? I didn't know where to start. The best way that I've learned that I've not that I've learned, but that I've experienced in getting back is to start being curious. You want to be curious about who you are. Be curious about who the real you is, because maybe you know, and maybe you don't. For me, I have a memory, and this is my North Star. Well, there's two parts. There's a memory of when I was in middle school, and I would wake up with energy every morning. I was reading books before I was going to bed. I was excited. I had a lot of energy, and I didn't have really any complaints in my life. And ever since that period ended, let's say it was several months, I never really felt like that again. And so throughout high school and through college, I was like, I want to get back to that version of me who was excited and who had his energy and, didn't let things get him down. I want to go back to that guy. But there's all these layers, there's all these conditioning, kind of like an onion, right? So like the center of the onion is like the raw, true, authentic you, and there's all these layers that we build around it, all the conditioning and the programming and the wiring of society and our family and just all the things, right? And there's even more of that than there used to be because of social media and how much information processes these days, and it's all online. And so we want to start to unwrap and unravel this onion. And so I have that North Star. And in addition to that, I've always had this feeling that I want to be a happy person. I want to be a positive person. I want to have a good, healthy mindset. I want to have a positive impact on others. I want to support people. That's always been something I've known. And so, like, that's part of my North Star also. So, as I started to deviate from that, because this was never like an active thing I was pursuing, as I started to deviate after a while, this distance became so great. I was like, this is uncomfortable. There's pain here. There's suffering. And I want to get back to who I really am. And so I wanted to learn how to turn this around and come back. And here's the sad part. Here's the unfortunate part. And hey, my case is no different. A lot of people need to hit some kind of rock bottom in order to realize I got to turn this around. And for me, it was this mental rock bottom when I was trying to get into business and I didn't like the career I was doing. I already mentioned that. And so as I was looking for the next thing, there was this part of me that said, Andre, you can't do this. Who's going to believe you? Who's going to think anything you have is valuable? And there was a part of me deep down that just knew how wrong that was. But the voice was so loud that was like, I can't do this. It was so loud that I was like, this is not me. Something is wrong here. This is not my voice. This is not the true part of me speaking. This is some condition, someone else's voice that's weak and keeping me from being the real me. And so I had to realize that, plant your feet at rock bottom and start to turn that ship around. And unfortunately, a lot of people have to hit a rock bottom that's a lot worse than what I experienced to really turn things around. So you start being curious about who you are, who you could be, and you have this North Star, and you want to start getting curious about how to get there. And the thing that I eventually realized is with the spiritual awakening process, with your journey, with this dark night a lot of people might be going through, it's a shedding and a discovery at the same time. So two things need to happen. When you start to realize that you have this momentum going in this other direction and we want to turn around, we have to, first of all, drop the things and let go of the things, as I mentioned, that are keeping us still going in this direction. And that's where we start to drop hobbies that aren't serving us, friends that aren't helping us really be who we want to be, maybe even family members. That's where it gets dark, lonely. You're on your own. You're figuring things out. There's confusion. Is this right? Is this wrong? A lot of cognitive dissonance. And then not only do we have to do that, after you do that, and as soon as possible, you really want to find the thing to pull you in the direction you do want to go. And you want to find something, some things, some community, some hobby, some anything that gives you the direction to head into next, because that is what's going to get you in towards your closer self, because you have to shed the outside layers of that onion. And as you shed the outside layers of the onion, you haven't been that raw, authentic you before. And some people, they might not have that example of that North Star. And for a lot of people, I think their faith in their God, their religion, that is what gives them that, if they never had that example of who they want to be before. And whatever it takes, right? It's not right or wrong. Everyone's different. And that's another thing. Once you realize everyone's different, you realize, well, no one can get me to where I want to go but me, because no one is me. No one knows my journey. No one knows my goals. And when I realize everyone's different, everyone's on their path, also on their separate path. And so if I have to love somebody from afar because they're not on their path the way I am on my path, then that's okay, because I understand they're on their journey, I'm on mine. I wish they would be here side by side with me, but they're not. And that's okay, because everyone's different. And so as you start to realize these things, you start to be curious, you start to realize everyone's different. You realize you're on your own path. You're carving your own way. And there's the dark and the sadness and the tears and the confusion and the screaming and the anger and whatever happens as we start to shed the momentum in this direction. All the things that are keeping us stuck, all the trapped emotions, all the thought patterns, all the behaviors, all the coping mechanisms. There's so many things that keep us going in this direction. As you start to shed that, you then need to look for what's going to replace all of that, and look for, how do I start finding which way is this way, right? Because you can stop going this way, but there's all these other ways. So this is just a metaphor, but you got to find the things that go back in that direction and then actively do them. And one of the ways that I found to do that is to really listen intuitively to yourself. Look at what interests you, journal, do self-inquiry, like internal meditations, not where you're trying to blast yourself out to outer space, but where you're really internally doing some self-processing, and start to turn back around and start to get closer to who you really are. And then you have to have the courage to step into that, because you might not have ever done it before. There's a lot of things in my spiritual path that I had never done before, that I'd always wanted to do. And doing something you've never done before is scary. It's uncomfortable. It's change. And a lot of people are just uncomfortable with change. I would argue that change is uncomfortable by definition. I think of a lot of things in the lens of physics, and I think it's uncomfortable by definition. And so as you do things that are different, you start to change. This is going to be uncomfortable. You have to literally make new wake and ripples in the water as you turn this whole boat around, because you're changing the direction. And it takes time. You're not like a speedboat that just goes here and goes here. You're like an oil tanker, like a cruise liner, where you have so much energy and momentum, and you can slowly start to curve and turn around. And so some people, and I was in this boat too, no shame. Some people try to do that with like psychedelics, plant medicines, anything to like turn back around faster. I do believe that you can move faster. I do believe that you can heal faster and you can make it through your journey faster if you have the right tools, if you have the best tools for the job. And I don't think that the drugs, the plant medicines, the whatever, are the best tool for the job. I tried it, and you can get good insight, but it's not necessarily going to do the rewiring and the long-term changes. But you can get an experience, and an experience can give you insight and awareness that you didn't have before. So as you start to really turn your own ship around, and you start to have your alignment, and you start to become close. You're never going to get fully all the way there. It's a constant, never-ending process. You can be on your journey for years, for decades. There's always going to be a better version of you. Someone, there's this guy named Donnie Epstein. He's an amazing, energetic, spiritual healer. And he has something, a quote that I've never heard anyone else say before. And the quote is that you're not enough for all you were made for. You will never be enough. Because a lot of us worry that we're not enough. And it hurts a little bit to hear that. But at the same time, it's refreshing. It's relieving. They're like, oh, no wonder I've felt that forever, because for all that my soul was made for all of the possible things I could ever do, for all that I could do in this life, there's no way I can do it all. There's no way that just me can do it. There's no way it can all be done. And the good thing is you don't have to. There's so many other people on this planet making their way and having their impact, that the planet is moving in a collective direction forward together. And so we just do what we can. We just do our part. We're never enough for all that we were made for. And that's okay. And that's okay too. So you have your direction, and you just keep going. As you start to turn this around, you keep going that direction. As you do that, you start to find other people, other communities, other groups who are also working their way towards their own spiritual advancement also. It can still feel lonely because you're the only one going on your spiritual advancement, your path, but you have other people going along their path. Now, maybe they experience something and they say, yeah, like, hey, we're friends, come experience this thing with me, because it worked for them. Doesn't mean it's going to work for you. It could feel foreign, it could feel different, it could feel whatever. It's not a one size fits all solution. I try to find the most root level, lowest common denominator tools that you can use, but it doesn't mean it works for everybody, and it doesn't. So as you get closer and closer and closer to the true you, the authentic you, that is where you close this gap where all of that unhappiness, all of that frustration, that cognitive dissonance, that suffering, that pain, you start to close that gap, and you start to become more of who you were meant to be. You start to become the real you. You start to become that core of the onion, but grown up. And that is a good place to be. And this is when you hear of people that have made all this money and then they just sold everything and went to go live in Costa Rica. I met a guy in Costa Rica, used to be a doctor, had his practice, made plenty of money, and then decided, you know what, I'm just going to sell everything, take my wife and kids. We're going to move to Costa Rica. And now he runs a restaurant in Costa Rica, and he takes his kids to school on a dirt road and on ATV every single morning, and he loves it. And what an experience for the kids. Obviously very different growing up in a different country, but he found something that was more true and aligned for him. I'm not saying you have to go get rid of everything and move to the jungles of Costa Rica. He wasn't in the jungle, but in society, there's so much pressure to do what you see on social media, to do the thing that everyone else is doing. And that is where there's so much pain and suffering in this world. There's so much pressure to be someone and something you're not. And I am leaving a six-figure career to be a coach and a healer because that is my North Star. That is what I'm realizing is my purpose. That's my direction. That is who I have always been without me knowing that's who I've always been. And that's why I say it's a discovery process. I had to discover who I was. You have to discover who you are. and that's okay. And it's challenging because everyone's different and no one knows who you are. If you don't know who you are, how can anybody else know who you are? They might have insights, but they don't actually know. And only you can discover that. So as you keep going down your path, it might be, you might feel alone sometimes, but being alone is different than being lonely. I used to worry that I was spending too much time alone and I was feeling lonely. I moved to a city, I didn't know anybody, try to make friends, try to be out there and be social. And it took me a long time, but after a while I realized, why do I keep chasing all these groups and all these other people that I think have something that I want? Because they didn't. And I realized I just got to work on me and get through the things that are making me look for that external validation, that external source, that external happiness, that external thing that was supposed to fix an internal problem. That's not the way it works. So eventually I got to the point where I could have time to myself and be alone, but not feel lonely. There's a difference. And so the main thing is that you keep going. The most important thing is that you keep going. It's like that quote, if you're going through hell, keep going, right? If you are on your path, you know this is where you're aiming for, and you're starting to turn your boat around. If you're starting to turn your boat around, you just have to keep going. You don't want to keep spinning and drifting. You want to turn and then find this and then start making your way. And the most important thing is to keep going, because here's the crux of it all. I think I said this in another video. It doesn't matter if you make it to this, because no one ever makes it all the way. Let's be honest. No one ever does. And so it's okay if you don't, because you probably won't. It's fine. The destination that we want to aim for is to be on the journey. The journey is the destination itself. And so as long as you get to the point where you're starting to turn your boat around and you're starting to come back, that's the goal. And then you just keep going. And who knows how long it's going to take? Who knows how far you have to go? It's freaking probably your whole life. But it's worth it. It's worth it living a life that's true to you and authentic, and not a life that somebody else wants you to live or programmed you to live. And the journey is the exciting part. It's fun to be chipping away and whacking away through the jungle with your machete, carving your own path. And if you're an entrepreneur, or business owner, high performer, that is what we do on a regular basis. The entrepreneurial journey is a spiritual journey because we are forging ahead against the grain, counterculture, whatever you want to call it. We're doing things that everyone else is not doing, and we are making our way through society the way that we want to leave the mark that we want to live, that we want to leave. And it's lonely at the top. Whether or not you're financially successfully at the top, right? You are the leader of the movement and you're at the head of it. Who knows who's behind you? But if you keep going, you might have some people starting to see you and starting to follow you. The most important thing is that you keep going. Doesn't matter how long it takes, because the journey is the destination. So as long as you're on it and you have a good path, you have a good guidance, you have a good North Star, find some other people moving in the same direction, heading on their own journeys, and just keep going and keep that community strong. Because that's what it's all about at the end of the day, is the relationships you have, the people that you meet along the way, and how you help each other transform each other's life. I just came back from a dinner, very unusual, not in a weird way, just very different, very unique. It was at a coffee shop which is owned and attached to this law office. This lawyer, this attorney, he owns the building. There's a coffee shop downstairs, and he put on Eventbrite. We're gonna have dinner at the coffee shop tonight. It was open to like 20, 30 people. And it was a whole conversation about conversations that change our lives. And as you start to bring your ship back towards your path, and you start to talk with other people along the way, whether they're on their journey or not, but you start to realize, you can start to hear what people are saying, and you can start to see, oh, this person is still here in the pain, or this person might be here where they're struggling a lot, and maybe it's their rock bottom or close to it. Or maybe this person is starting to find their way back towards themselves. It's a remembering of who we are. And so you start to notice. And you can influence people not directly, not forcefully. But as you start to be further on your path, you start to understand the human experience. And as you start to understand the human experience, you can connect and relate with people wherever they are along their journey. And you can give some guidance that might just change their life also. And that is why it's so important to keep going, because you're going to be a light and a beacon for others. And who knows how close you're going to get, but you can get pretty close if you keep your eyes on the North Star. A lot of us get distractions by money, relationships, by coping mechanisms, by what's the word I'm thinking of? Anything, temptations, a lot of distractions out there in the world. But if you keep focused, you can pull a lot of other people with you along the way. So that's why I think the spiritual journey can feel alone at times, because we're the ones making our way through the jungle. We are the ones that are looking for answers when other people might not be, especially those close to us. And so we have to go through this on our own. But as we keep going, we do that, we will find others to share the journey with. And those people are worth keeping around. So thanks for listening. I'll see you on the next video. Have a good week.